All right. Well, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. Today I'm joined by Karith Foster, who is a speaker, comedian, author, diversity engagement specialist, and the founder of Inversity Solutions. So, Karith, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure, Ben. Thank you for having me.
So, when did you first get interested in, healing divisions in society?
Honestly, I think it was when I was a kid.
Okay.
Truthfully, I wanted to be a media personality because I thought, wow, those are the beacons of light and truth. They're the dispensers of knowledge, of information. They have an audience, a captive audience. I mean, the television. I mean, and back when I was growing up, there were like, three major networks.
Yep.
Um, and so we didn't have these options. There wasn't 24-hour news per se, but I thought, wow, if I could do that, I could bring people together. Like I can make the world a better place.
Sure.
So
Yeah. I
that
mean,
was
that
my
makes
motivation
sense.
from the beginning.
So you've always kind of had this on your mind of like, you could do something like this and help, help people come together and which seems to be very relevant today. So that's good.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew
That's right.
back then what it was going to happen with the world? Maybe it was prophetic. Like
That's right. It was all
had
part of
this.
the plan. Yeah.
Right, there you go.
So what were the origins of Inversity then? How'd that come
Sure.
about?
So I initially was looking at stand up. I went into broadcasting, got my degree in broadcasting, moved to New York City to actually work for The View because I thought, who better than Barbara Walters
Sure.
to have as your first boss if this is like the path you're going to be on, right? And while I was there, I found stand up comedy, or rather, it found me. And it was, one of those things where I was like, wow, where I felt really, I, I would say siphoned by the media, but like there's only so much you get to say. Like once you get in, you realize like who's really in control. It's the
Sure.
networks, it's the sponsors, there's not the autonomy and the freedom that you think there would or should be.
Right.
So with comedy came this, this freedom really, and this ability to be just truly authentic, right? Which I always wanted to do. It's why I initially had a problem with acting because I'm like, I don't want to fake it. Like I don't,
Yeah.
it just wasn't comfortable for
Right.
me until I learned this Stanley Meisner technique, which is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. But until I learned that, I was just like, that's just, I can't be somebody else. I only know how to be Karith. Even though I've had a lot of people in my life, a lot of iterations of people telling me I should be something else. I should be, blacker. I should be, whatever. And it's like, well, why do I have to be a stereotype? Why do I have to be what your image of why can't I just be me? And I feel like so often, that's a part of the conversation that so many people are dealing with now with identity politics,
Yeah.
right? Which even that term can seem a little bit controversial, right? Because of how
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
being used. But the reality is, if you're being told you have to be a certain way based on your sexuality, your gender, your ethnicity, your political views, I just think that's so it robs us of our agency
Yeah.
and being able to be thoughtful individuals that contribute to society. So back on track, I got into Inversity through a career shift. I went back into broadcasting after doing stand up for a long time. I had an iteration of HR while pursuing stand up, but I got a call from an old booker saying, "Hey, interested in a TV opportunity?" I'm like, "Of course." Oh, by the way, it's with Don Imus. Now, if that name rings a bell, it's because he was the shock jock. He predated Howard Stern. He
Yeah.
was a shock jock who got in trouble for the Rutgers debacle, calling the Rutgers women's basketball team nappy headed hose. And I remember watching that live going, oh my God, I should have been there. Like, I should have been there to have this conversation with him because I saw it from multiple perspectives. I saw it from a comedian trying to riff, be funny off the cuff, not having, a place to vet it. And I saw it from a Black woman, right? Who's like, ooh, that was a low blow. Like that was really uncalled for. It was insulting. And I, if I could have married those two things, but 3 months later, after that incident, I get a call saying, hey, you interested in being on the air with this man? And that being your job for the
Wow.
next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Because the idea was, let's have a national dialogue about race, racism, and I'm pretty sure it was a CYA move, like, let's help him redeem himself in the
Yeah.
media. But I also saw it as an opportunity for me to, certainly escalate my career, but, be the voice that I wanted to be the voice that, way back when, here I could do it, and I could be funny, and I could talk news and politics of the day. Like, what a boon,
Right.
right? Dream job. Um, and I got there, and it wasn't quite the dream job. I jokingly say it was my tale of two cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Because it was a dream job, just with somebody who was very, very damaged. And I say that with a loving heart, because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict who never sought recovery. Like, he stopped
Yeah.
drinking, stopped taking drugs, but he didn't remedy what caused him to do those things. You know what I mean? So it was a very toxic environment. You never knew who you were going to get: the amazing Marconi Award winning creative genius, or a bipolar 14-year-old boy. Like, you just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so that was tough. But with that charge of having this national dialogue about race and racism and, diversity and what's going on in the world, it really made me focus on what is happening with this whole diversity conversation. I mean, this is something we've supposed to be working on for the past, like, at that point, like 50, 60 years. And why aren't things getting better? Why, in fact, do they seem to be getting worse? And what I realized, and it seems so simple, was that maybe it was the approach, not necessarily the message, but, as anybody who's married say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah. That's right.
Right? That's, does this dress make me look fat? Okay, how are you going to answer that?
Yep.
And so what I realized was, it's not that we shouldn't be talking about diversity or inclusion or belonging or equity or equality. It's maybe the approach that is keeping people from really connecting on a deeper level. And I love words. I'm a comedian, I'm an author, I'm a wordsmith. And I just looked at the word diversity and, breaking it down to I took Latin in high school. I was totally a nerd. Like the root, right? DIV, and all the words that start with that: division, divide, divorce.
Yeah.
It literally means apart. And yet we're using the word diversity to try to bring people together. And we're shocked it's not working. So inversity was the inverse of that. It was still the taking of the good parts of it, right? The acknowledging and honoring and respecting who we are, what we bring to the table, but also the expansion, right? Of not just our heritage, not just our ethnicity, not just our gender and sexuality, but the expansion of, diversity of thought and ideas, right? But shifting the focus from what is it that separates and divides us to what is it we have in common? How can we be truly inclusive of one another? But most importantly, and I think powerfully, how can we be introspective, right? Meaning understanding your value, your worth, your connection to humanity. So if you can see it in yourself, then you can see it in someone else. And
Right.
I think that's where we've been missing the mark, right? We've been trying to do all this stuff from the outside in. Well, you got to change people's minds. You got to, okay, yeah, but people can change their minds right back. How about we have to work from what we're dealing with on the inside, change how our behavior rather than our belief system, and truly analyze, how do we connect the heart and the mind? Because that's really where the change happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting and super cool. I mean, how you phrase that all, because yeah, having conversations with people in general is not necessarily the specialty of people when they're, especially when they're talking to people of different backgrounds. So, but also the idea of trying to free yourself from kind of, I guess, this box that people are automatically put in, just in society in general. You know, it's easier to fit in somewhere than, be outside of it and kind of exploring on your own. So kind of breaking down, I guess, that kind of typical path people go down in society. Um, but yeah, I guess in the US, I mean, there's not many countries in the world where you have this much diversity, where people are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds and perspectives. So it is a definitely unique situation to be here and to try to, navigate that. So it's cool, that you kind of figured out a way to try to do that in a method that is, sort of more unifying than people walking away with it like, well, I don't really like how that went, or so
Which happens a lot
yeah,
because I think that, there are a lot of people that are at this point are DEI'd out. Like they're done,
yeah,
they're exhausted because it is a touchy subject. And it's touchy because it's personal,
yeah,
right? Because it's about who you are and how you show up and what you look like and, you know, just all these personal aspects of who you are and what you bring to the table. And then if you're being set up to be told, well, you don't get a voice or you don't get to say anything because you're not gay or you're not Asian or you're not whatever, like I just think that's so unfair, and it really it destroys the table that we could really set for a beautiful conversation.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I guess then that's, as I understand, like a big part of Inversity is to kind of do the opposite of what like DEI programs are doing. And instead of just focusing on like, okay, okay, you're the victim of this or you're the victim of that, and it's kind of your fault, or your ancestors' fault, or whatever. It's kind of just breaking down those conversations, look at the complexity of what it means to be human in general, and kind of understanding like differences are okay, and history happens, and how do we move on together. Um,
That's
so
exactly it. And it's
yeah,
not, I started to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
I really like to express that it's not a dismissing of history. It's not
Right,
like glossing over. It's not saying, oh, the past is in the past and we just, it's saying, yeah, this happened. Let's learn from it so we don't repeat it. Let's not do it again, but just to the opposite group of people.
right,
Let's actually take the lessons, take the tragedy, the trauma, heal from it, and move forward from where we are right now. We can't go back and change anything. God, I
yeah,
wish we could,
yep,
but we can't. So what we can do is operate from here and now. And I think that is where a lot of people do kind of get caught up because, and the victimization is, we all get something out of it, right? I mean, we all get something out of everything. There's a payoff, right? And there's a payoff if you, and I may get in trouble, not trouble, but there may be people who don't want to hear this, right?
sure,
But there's a payoff in being a victim because then it's somebody else's fault, right?
yep,
And if it's somebody else's fault, then it's okay if I, don't get something because I can blame them. Not the fact that maybe I didn't exert myself or try harder. It's the payoff of I can blame someone else instead of having to take personal responsibility. And that's a big part of adversity is personal responsibility because nobody is in charge of how you feel. Only you. Only you. Only you can dictate that. And that's a scary thing for some people, but it should be the most empowering thing for people. Because once you realize that, wait, nobody else can make me feel bad about myself, nobody else can box me in, nobody else can put me in a corner, nobody else can degrade me, nobody else's words have power over me or dominion over me. Oh my God, what freedom comes with being able to recognize that.
yeah. I mean, essentially, you're giving people back agency over their lives. Like, I just, no matter what my circumstances are, I can still live my life the way I want to and overcome it, instead of just being trapped in kind of circumstances out of my control, which I think is a really important message because it is something where if you get, I mean, no matter who you are, if you get stuck in some issue you've had in your life, if it just, basically consumes you entirely, then it's very hard to do anything with your life. And given how short life is, that's kind of a tragedy. And it's also in victimhood is something really interesting because outside of the U.S., there are entire countries that where you have like dictators that are using victimhood, blaming other nations for their the problems of their countries, and the poverty that people are dealing with. And so it's a tool to kind of manipulate people as well. So it's something you have to be very careful about. It's dangerous. But the other thing I thought was really interesting is your take on like on history and uh, how to use history kind of as a tool. Because I've always thought when examining history, as a historian and studying it, is just, I mean, you can look at history as, oh wow, look all this stuff, all these problems that we've all these terrible things we've done to each other, and that can be very traumatic or make you kind of feel hopeless. But in many ways, also history, I think, is something that you get hope from, because like, wow, look all these things we overcame. You know,
Yeah.
all your ancestors, you know, are overcoming one problem after another just for you to be here today. Which were the chances of that happening? You know, people
Right.
meeting and surviving wars and diseases, and your parents just having to meet each other somewhere somehow. I mean, in many ways, you know, history I feel like is inspiring for people. So it's cool to kind of promote the message of people, you know, using history as a way of like, look how far we've come, rather than wow, look how crappy the world is. So
And that's totally perspective, right?
yeah,
Glass half full versus empty. And that's definitely a personality trait, I think, but it's also something I think that is learned. And the more we encourage people to just look at the negatives, it's the law of attraction, right? Where your attention goes, energy flows. And what you focus on, you will get more of, which is why, again, the whole idea of diversity and this divisiveness that comes from it, like, we're shocked when we're telling people to focus on, look at how different we are. Look at, all the things that, make us unique and different. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't acknowledge those things, but if that's the focus, then you're taking people away from the commonalities, which is a huge part of history and why we are where we are now. And the fact that we do exist. All the things that you just mentioned are, maybe sometimes it's happenstance, maybe it's chance, but it's also, somewhat destiny. And I think, I'm definitely a very spiritual person. I think
mm-hmm.
that there's an element of source, contributing, and certainly our faith in things and in people and in one another. And I don't think those things should be discounted either.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that you know, all these things could happen. I mean, if anyone, you know, whether religious or not, if you want to kind of define a miracle, it's kind of the fact that, you know, all of us exist in the first place,
I mean, do
given
you
the
know the
chances
odds,
are
right?
very unlikely. So
The
um,
odds of that, like, until, like, if you've ever struggled with pregnancy or like thought about it or
right.
trying to get pregnant, like, like it's not that easy. Like, you
No,
can't
no,
do it. I mean, that odds of that sperm finding that egg and
yeah,
making it, like, to
it's
make
insane.
you,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like winning the lottery pretty much.
yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I think a lot of people probably not enough people think about that, but yeah, it's definitely something that can make you, I guess, take life less for granted, I suppose, when you think of kind of the big picture of like, okay, you know, how do we even get here in the first place and all the things that led to us? It's pretty spectacular. So now, why do you think then, you know, have DEI programs sort of always been that way that you're kind of trying to get away from with Inversity, or did they change at some point?
I wish I could say, I'm a savant. I've studied DEI for forever. I haven't. It's only been in the last, decade and a half that I just realized that there needs to be an alternative to what's there, because what is there, well, I think the people are very well intentioned. And I think most people's hearts are in the right place. They're missing the mark.
Yeah.
So, my involvement in this space came out of, well, it came out of two things. The whole, being called to have this national conversation on a national platform, no easy feat for one show, let alone one person. But right after I left IMUS in 2010, there was an incident, coincidentally, involving a Rutgers University student, and a young man by the name of Tyler Clementi took his life by jumping off the George Washington Bridge. And he did so because he was outed by his roommate and some fellow classmates.
Okay. Wow.
And I just remember hearing this news and it just breaking my heart because, I've been in the entertainment industry. I lived in New York City for 20 plus years. I have friends that run the gamut, right? Transgender friends, LGBTQ friends, like the whole. And I just remember thinking nobody should feel that alone for whatever it is they think makes them different or
Yeah.
separates them from the quote unquote status quo, right? Because the reality is everybody has had trauma. Everybody's felt like they haven't fit in at one point or time in their life. And regardless of if it is your sexuality, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, like nobody should get to the point where they feel like their only recourse is to take their own life. So what can I do? How can I change that? What message can I bring? And I started with programming initially called Stereotype 101 that I took to colleges and universities because I thought, this is my audience. These are the people who need to hear this the most. And I still think they do. Like and it probably needs to start even earlier without question, since the rise of social media. But it's, so the factor of this thinking that we're alone, thinking that it's only us going through something, nothing could be more false. And again, this idea, I think the biggest lie we've been told is that we're weak, is that we are fragile, and we're not. But if that's what you're being told constantly, you're going to believe it because you believe what people tell you about yourself, right? About your generation, about your group of people. And so that's what Inversity is about, empowering people really to understand how amazing and powerful they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Because it is definitely, I think it's very easy for people to get kind of trapped in their own thoughts and just kind of isolate themselves, and that isolation kind of breeds, further depression. And I think pretty much every person, I think, is dealing with that to a certain extent, because it's you're the only person that knows what it's like to be you. But there's lots of people that can relate to you and have gone through something similar, or someone has gone through something before you have, that you can kind of get advice from and to deal with that issue. But yeah, that's interesting. I know one thing I kind of always thought was interesting growing up is I was always interested in like ancestry research or trying to figure out, where my family come from or whatever. And one thing about when you do ancestry research in general is just how much you learn about, all of the issues your family had to overcome. You're like, wow, okay, maybe having to study for this exam or something in high school is not so bad. When you think of people, trying to survive in situations. But yeah, so I guess just kind of perspective is key, and finding people that can help you regain a healthy perspective on things.
Totally. And you made a great point. I had a theater professor that used to say, we're all the stars of our own one person play. Right.
Yeah.
And we are, like, we only know what our life is like. Even if we have a twin, that's not our lives. They may look
Right. Yeah.
identical, but they're not leading identical lives. They're not having the exact same experiences. And so we just have to remember that, while we're the star of our own play, we're not on the stage just by ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to take the spotlight off of us and focus on someone else and think about all the other people who've been on the stage before us, right?
Yeah,
What their
sure.
experiences were too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, it sounds like your organization that is has a lot to offer to a lot of people. So that's great.
And it's fun. I mean, this is
Yeah.
the thing, Ben. Like, we just talked about, we have no idea about any life guarantees, right? We don't know how long we're going to be here.
Yep.
I mean, we don't know if there's going to be another pandemic. Like, there's nothing that we know for certain, right? So, first of all, if you're putting any time or energy into anything, especially this deep, why not make it fun? Why not make it enjoyable?
True.
Why not make it something people want to do? I mean, I think that's probably the most significant difference between what I do and what a lot of other DEI programs are about, because it's not that it's not serious work. Of course it is. But if you really want to be impactful, you need to be engaging. And just because it's serious doesn't mean you can't invoke laughter and
Yeah.
humor. And having been a stand-up comedian for 25 plus years, I started when I was 5.
There you go.
I realized what a beautiful, powerful tool laughter is. And I think everybody remembers, their favorite school teacher, their favorite professor. They were the ones that made class fun and engaging, and you retained more and you wanted to be there. Right? I want my audience to be there. I want them like engaging. I want them having the aha moments and the epiphanies. I don't want people feeling browbeaten and just, it can be so toxic. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And I don't know why I feel like I'm the only person saying this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems logical. I mean, your method just, yeah, I don't understand why more people wouldn't try to do that. Maybe it's something that people aren't comfortable with, being kind of comedic about things. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I don't see like laughter is obviously key to life in general. You can't really live a very good life if you're not if you're taking it too seriously and you're not laughing enough. I mean, that's sounds pretty painful. So yeah, I mean, it
It
would be
is.
great if more people could incorporate that into lots of different things, because yeah, I mean, I think not only from a learning standpoint, but just in life in general, it's very hard to go through the motions of things if you can't laugh about stuff. And I know that if I'm sitting through a presentation and it's really boring, not very funny, that I'm going to probably not remember much of it. So,
Yeah, in one ear, out the other. Literally, that's what
yep,
happens. And I think another thing about laughter and humor is that, when it's done well, and I mean, I'm not going in there with dirty jokes, I
right,
mean, it's corporate clean,
right,
but it's healing, it's cathartic. Like there's a catharsis and most people who are connoisseurs of comedy, they know that it comes from pain. I mean, why are some of the most notable comics Jewish, Black, I mean, have gone through some stuff.
yeah. I'm curious then, given all the stuff that you're doing with Inversity, there's a lot of people, for example, that may listen to this who live in different countries around the world, and not everyone's going to have Inversity necessarily show up at their office someday. So what are like things that advice you give to just the average person, across the world, that can help them, I guess, kind of heal divisions in their societies, or bridge gaps with people, and make connections with people from all over. So
The first thing, honestly, that came to my mind is be kind. Just be kind. Like it doesn't cost anything
yeah,
to be
it's true.
kind.
Yeah,
It really doesn't. I mean, sure, you could, do that, pay for the coffee ahead of the person,
yeah,
and it like comes like that little chain and you get your coffee free and you pay for the next person. But it could be a smile. It could be, giving someone a compliment, asking them how they're doing, giving someone the benefit of the doubt who might come in with a bad attitude and maybe they were just, almost in a traffic accident. Maybe they've got an elderly parent they're dealing with. Maybe they've got a kid with autism. Like there's so many elements of other people's lives that we don't know that just a little bit of kindness, a smile, a show of gratitude, of benevolence can change somebody's life for the better. And we have to remember not just to be kind to others, but to be kind to ourselves. I mean, we beat ourselves up relentlessly. And that was the introspection part of Inversity because, here we're telling other people to be good to other people. Most of us wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and are the harshest critics. I mean, we say stuff to ourselves that if anybody else dared to say to us,
yeah,
we'd be like, who raised you?
yeah,
Why would you say that to me? And yet
right.
we say it to ourselves. And so then we're supposed to be like nice to other people when we can't even be nice to us. I mean, it is common sense, it is logical, but sometimes it's not the most available, because we don't think about it in that way. So that's what Inversity is. It's just a new way to kind of see things, shifting the perspective a little bit, going inside a little bit to make that change. And, I also think that a lot of diversity work, I actually have a webcast that I offered called about like toxic, getting detoxing from bad DEI. And I think one of the things that really has people misled is thinking that diversity work is a two-way street. And that one of the streets is that it's solely about ethnicity and gender and sexuality. And the other misnomer is that if we do diversity right, if we get it right, if it's successful, then everybody's going to be on the same page and we're all going to agree. We're all going to think the exact same way.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the antithesis of diversity.
yeah, that's what we work that way. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. It's
Yeah.
nice pie in the sky, but that's not reality
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point because, like, I mean, even if you're thinking of your friends or family, you do not agree with any person on everything. That just doesn't happen. So,
No, and how boring. Oh my God. How boring would life be?
yeah.
We'd
Well,
be
yeah, that's right.
miserable.
Like, what would be the point? Yeah, if everyone just tells you, "Oh, yeah, you're correct." Yeah, that would be pretty weird. That's true. So then, I'm curious. You know, the U.S. obviously, over time just continues to get more and more diverse, and families are mixing on religious or ethnic lines or sexuality lines now more and more. Do you think over time, uh, sort of the situation with people having kind of divisions in society because of diversity or whatever, do you think that society over time will get better in the US with increased mixing, or do you think that people are always going to find ways to divide themselves and there's always going to be a need to try to bridge the gap, so to speak?
If we could turn our TVs off and shut down social media, I think
Yeah,
we'd be golden. I
we
mean, we
do pretty
would be
well.
golden, right? Like seriously, we could all just go camping together. Or
Yeah.
my kids glamping. I'm not a roughing it kind of girl. But here's the thing. I travel a lot, right? I'm in airports, I'm at events, when I go places, if we have an opportunity to go to like an amusement park like Disney World or, Knott's Berry Farm, whatever, you get to observe. And I see families and groups of people and very mixed audiences in large spaces, right? Like music festivals. And for the most part, everybody's getting along and you see these mixed families and you see these mixed, and it's, granted it's a snapshot, right? But unless someone's just out to be a jerk, there's very little conflict that arises.
Yeah.
I think that, we talk about these narratives and what we're being told. And I think we're being told to be divided more than we actually are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to be very cognizant of. And it's easy to, again, get online, go down that rabbit hole, get sucked into the black hole of crazy and think, you have to, be on your side of things. And unfortunately we do get siloed. Well, what political party are you? Are you left or are you right? Like there's not a lot of room for in the middle when the reality is most people are in the middle. Like 86% of people are in the same space, but
Yeah.
it's the loudest ones extreme on the extreme sides that get the airtime. And I do think that there is some element. I don't have a name, I don't have a group, I can't point a finger, but I think there's something that is intentionally trying to pit us against each other and divide us. And
Yeah.
it's on every level, black versus white, men against women, cis against like trans. And it's this nonstop. And if we allow ourselves to buy into it, if we don't stay strong in our convictions, our love of self and of our fellow human beings, then we will be sucked into that negative space that I think is very challenging to get out of.
Yeah, that makes total sense because I mean I think that there's always been people that will exist in societies that for whatever reason obviously they're all going through something, but maybe they feel like they need to become more ideologically rigid about an issue and more kind of extreme about it, or maybe they are trying to just get more power and influence for whatever reason. If you're a politician and you're trying to get a voting block, maybe you're like, okay, let me take a more hardcore stance on this for gain politically, which shouldn't be the case. And it'd be great if people didn't feel like they had to do that. But yeah, I definitely think that there are people that will always try to prey on divisions a bit because they can get some type of benefit from it. That's something that people definitely should always be aware of because it's happened time and time again in history. Just
Hello,
so
you're the historian. Every great general knows how do you win? Divide and conquer.
right. That's right, pretty much.
And so what are we doing? We're fighting over the little things. We're
Yep.
fighting over about, no, it's not little, but you know what I mean? The stuff that it doesn't have to be as big as it is.
Yes, for sure.
And it's like there's bigger stuff that's going on that we should really be unified on
Oh yeah, yeah.
and giving our attention to.
Yes, I mean, yeah, there's plenty of things that are more important than, social issues, which, yeah, I mean, we can there's certainly debates that need to be had about them, but we can solve them in a common sense way, and then focus on bigger things, and helping each other, because the really big problems don't go away, so, and they just get worse in many cases. So, yeah, priorities, I guess, and people kind of being more balanced. Now, what are you currently working on then? What else is new? Is there anything
Oh
further
my
you're doing?
goodness. There's always something in the works.
That's good.
So, right now, I offer keynotes and workshops anywhere from 2 hours to a full day. Actually, we even have like a couple of day retreats for like, leaders. I have a series of offerings that are about creating a space for healthy conversation. So, one is a leadership roundtable, and the other is, oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now. But the kind of discussions, guided discussions after like a workshop or a keynote, because oftentimes, something a lot of things will come up for people when they get to come into this work in a healthy way and they have questions or there are things they want to work through. And that's why it really isn't one and done work, which I also think is another approach that traditional DEI does as well. We came in, we did our unconscious bias training, take it and go.
Yeah, yeah.
And, but it's like, A, it will get lost if it's not really ingrained. And B, there's stuff that comes up afterwards that people need guidance through, sometimes a little hand holding, sometimes just a sounding board, right? And so to give people that opportunity so that they can grow and apply it, like that's the healthy way to do this. So I am working on a book
Oh,
called
okay.
The
Nice.
Inversity Solution. And I cannot even tell you when that's going to be out, but the publishing process is a while.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Hopefully
Yeah.
not in the too far off future. Um, but have been toying with a podcast called The Care Culture
Oh,
Show.
nice. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, because everybody has, my Chihuahua has a podcast, and I
That's
don't.
pretty accurate statement, I think. Yeah.
Why not throw my hat in the ring?
Yeah, might as
Um,
well.
but I do a lot of traveling, a lot of virtual work, and I so love what I do. I love being able to be with people and bring teams together and help leaders who just want cohesive, healthy communication for their employees, and it's fun.
No, for sure. Yeah. That's the ideal thing to want is, how can you make things better? So, um, cool. Okay. Awesome. Well, and what's the best way for people to like follow your work and keep track of the book or future podcasts on the way?
Absolutely. So my name is Karith, Karith Foster. Inversity Solutions is our website, and that's INVERSITY Solutions. Don't forget the S.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So,
Awesome.
and Twitter.
Perfect.
I try to tweet too. So, not as good about Twitter as I should be, but I've got a team that's helping me now with some stuff. So,
That's
yeah.
good. That works. Awesome. Well, thank you so much then for coming on and sharing, all of your knowledge and insights. It's been super fun conversation. So,
Oh, Ben, thank you for having me.